So here we are back with part two this week. And now we're turning into project managers' competencies, right? What are your competencies? And the Project Management Institute kind of neatly divides them into three aspects, which the triangle demonstrates. And those are technical skills, strategic skills, and of course, leadership skills. So, your technical skills are what you've learned in your industry or you're studying in project management. Your strategic skills means incorporating your business acumen with that, which is a good understanding of risk management and financial obligations. They give a good description of some of the risk factors when they talk about on page 10 what is managed, the three goals of a project. And you're always making trade offs between cost, schedule, and scope, right? And so the book does a good description of that. And when it talks about risks, right, we talk about risks through the project life cycle on page 12 and 13, amongst other things. And then on page 15, there's a good description of non-numeric selection methods for your project, right? And these are all about the risks and the business value and the business realization that goes with it. And then you notice scope, budget, and schedule. And I always include quality with that. That's part of that strategic consideration. And that's why when I'm new to a project, I ask for the business case and the benefits management plan that go with it. Now, the third part, right, I mentioned that there's technical skills, number one, strategic and business skills, and leadership skills. Leadership is the art of influence, so it can be developed over time. And so to be a great leader, frankly, I think you need to be a lifelong learner. And notice then management becomes part of it. And here particularly, it's managing relationships, building trust, seeking consensus, balancing goals, which we're going to talk about in a minute, because these things allow you to prioritize your project work as you develop it. And so remember your powers as in CLIP, right? I mentioned politics and power as part of leadership. Part of politics is about that leadership and management working together to get her done, right? Get things done. And you want to use your power. Sometimes you have a position power because you're the boss. And it comes with subtypes of power like reward power or punishment or punitive power. That's not considered great, but it's sometimes necessary. A referent power like Patton or Seinfeld, when you see somebody and you have a reference for them, a sort of devotion for various reasons. Sometimes there's situational power. I found the movie The Flight of the Phoenix a good example of situational power, that even though you're the boss, then maybe you're not really in charge because you're not the expert in this area. And your role becomes asking the right questions in terms of risks and constraints and schedule, right? And of course, we all know experts at work. So expert power is a real thing. There are lots of them there that I list out. Feel free to pause and review it. Now, in leadership then, we want to remember management is more about directing, and leadership is about guiding, influence, setting a vision, right? And regardless of how we feel inside, we can adapt our styles, right? But it's important to understand who we are, where we're comfortable, and how we need to adapt or change, right? Are we a laissez-faire approach? And does our senior leadership support that? Are we a transactional leader, right, where we manage by exception? Are we a servant leader, people first, right? Or do we empower others and then go on and inspire them because we're interested in being transformational, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So I list some other examples there. Pause here and reflect on those at your leisure. But notice the difference between management, which is directing, it's fairly sterile, it's predictive, and leadership, which is guiding, influence, leaping into the breach, filling the gap, that sort of thing. And you're going to do that in project management through life cycles. And they do a nice little discussion on life cycles in the literature, chapter 1, section 1.5. So make sure you read that. But realize that you're interested primarily in the project life cycle, right? And the project will begin and it will end, and that's your life cycle. And in the life cycle, it could be a single circle where you plan the project and initiating. You do initiating, then you do planning, then you do executing, monitoring, controlling, and close it out. It could be one single circle, and that's your life cycle. Or you might do phases of the life cycle. So you might have a design phase, and you would do initiating, planning, executing, controlling, and closing. And at closing, you test your results. It's called a phase gate. And if it approves, meets your measures, you'd go on to the next phase, which might be construction of something. And you'd do initiating, planning, executing, controlling, and closing. At the closing, you'd test the result, make sure it's what you wanted, and then you'd go on to the next phase, which might be the final phase. And at the final phase, you would close out your project, okay? And so you have these life cycles. Could be a single life cycle, could be multiple. Depends on how many phases you have. And all of these types of life cycles basically fall into 5. I call it happy. Hybrid, adaptive, which is agile, really change-driven. Predictive, which is also known as waterfall life cycle, and that's the traditional project management. There's iterative and incremental, right? Remember, we mentioned time, cost, and scope earlier. That was mentioned on page 10 of your book. That's largely the predictive or waterfall life cycle. And but notice an iterative life cycle is focused on time and cost. An incremental life cycle is focused on time, right? And a hybrid could be a mix of any. Most of the projects I do are hybrid anymore. Now, one other point I want to make is that there are financial indications, right, of which projects your benefits management plan and your business case should talk about these financial measures that you want to achieve in your project. So you might do you might have a murder board that gives you the results. You might prepare your benefits plan and show it to somebody else. That would be a peer review. You might do weighted scoring models in choosing which type of project should be pursued. And most of this is done by the C-suite above you, by the executive suite, right? There is a nice description in the book on scoring methods, right? And weighted scoring models beginning on around page 20 of the book and going through page 23. So make sure you review that. But basically, the focus is largely on economic models, and that's taking small money, which you see the little pile, and turning it into big money. And that's the time value of money, right? How do I create more money? And so I might want to consider my present value of the money, which is equal to the future value, divided by 1 plus the interest rate to the nth power. And the nth power is the number of time periods. Might be 4 quarters, might be 2 years, whatever you're using. Net present value comes up a lot, right? And in the end, what you really need to know is this is how much the value of all my inflows minus all my outflows, which is a little different than return on investment, which talks about not just inflows, but it talks about benefit, which can come in terms of even relationships or respect in the industry, etc., right? That's not always monetary. So it's benefits divided by the return to the investor. It's more about efficiency and performance. And then there are some others, the payback period, etc. Now, as a project manager, here's really all you need to know. As you're looking at the time value of money, you need to know that as a project manager, bigger is better for present value. If I have two present values, $100,000 or $200,000, I'm going with the $200,000. Definitely. Bigger is better. Same with net present value. The internal rate of return, which is just, am I going to return a rate of 8% or 20%? I'm going with 20%. But there are two of them where smaller is better. Payback period. If I lend you $10, do I want my $10 next week or today? I want it today, right? Smaller is better. And for opportunity cost, also smaller is better. What you do is you compare two projects and you say, okay, this A if I don't pursue it, it's going to cost the company that will not make this money, right? The company, by not pursuing A, will lose $100,000. By not producing B, what is that opportunity cost, right? So opportunity cost compares two projects, and you choose the one that you don't do would be the smaller one, right? You want to lose less money. It's kind of a strange concept, but not essential, but just know bigger is better, smaller is better. You'll have financial analysts. It's your job to ask the right question. Now, I want to also mention sunk costs. As a project manager, sunk costs are not something we normally concern ourselves with. The definition of a project is it's unique and time bound. It's unique. It's never been done exactly this way. So we don't necessarily worry about sunk costs. We manage it, we try and reduce it, eliminate it. But once it's sunk, right? We still wouldn't have the Apple computers if we were worried about sunk costs, right? Or the iPad. The question to a project manager which is different to a manager. But to a project manager, the real question is not how much money is sunk, but it's, are the objectives of this project based on the benefits management plan and the business case still valid? That's the great question. So to do all this, to put it together at these early stages, we worry about vision and goals. So a clear vision statement is going to define the direction we're going to go. So we take the organizational directive and the business case, and we transition that into the project charter with the vision and goals, and then into the project plan. And this sets the stage then for our planning activities. So a well-written vision and mission statements ensure that the strategy and the business case gets put into our project. So I've got this kind of flow chart that shows how to set up our team to get results, right? The what defines the goals that are desired, and we want to make sure it supports the why. And so we focus our approach to achieve a few goals with excellence. We don't have to do all. We want to make sure we can get from X to Y by when. That's an important question to ask your team. And you want to also make sure that you have a verb and that what you want to make progress on from X to Y. And give examples. Have the team create examples. Okay, here would be what that would look like in writing: from X to Y by when. Helps you define that, and then you can stay actively engaged. Now, I am going to put in the additional material a video on clear vision and goals. 5-minute video. I think it's well worth your time. I've enjoyed this, and I will see you all on the discussion board. Feel free to write with any questions or contact me during my office hours.